doing this. So welcome, guys. We have two eager beavers. Bob and Sarah, welcome. We're just going to give it a moment, if that's okay, because people are rarely this prompt. Um, it was really nice having a bit of a chat then, Donna, actually. We were just having a catch up because Donna's just come back from a lovely holiday, all relaxed, ready to ready
Ready.
to go again before Christmas.
Yeah.
That's great. Let me just press that over there. So actually, I think we'll start because what we actually find is that we do have a lot of people join us, and then obviously we've got all the people that registered for the recording that aren't able to join us. Um, so thank you so much, Donna, for agreeing to do this. For those of you that haven't met Donna before, Donna Hall is regional manager for the East and West Midlands.
Yeah.
Your
Bit so.
practice plan?
Yeah.
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 So you just said you've had a bit of a rejig of your regional areas, haven't you? So we've invited Donna to talk to us today, because one, some people may be considering plans, some people may be having plans, already have plans, or want to know what type of plans there are available, and actually how plans can really enhance the productivity from your practice and your patient journey. Um, Obviously, there's been quite a lot going on with the budget. I think everyone kind of had a bit of a panic, didn't they, a couple of weeks ago? And it's all gone a bit quiet again now. But I know the practices that I'm visiting around the UK, everyone's concerned. Um, is that something that's been on your radar a little bit, Donna?
Yeah. I mean, regardless of what type of practice you're in, Lisa, I think the reality is you've got to find the extra money from the budget from somewhere. The NI going up or minimum wage and all of the implications of that. And the challenge for most practices is where do I pull that money from, without just piling it onto my treatment fees. Bit easier if you're in a private practice, but definitely a challenge if you're in an NHS or, a mixed practice. So, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
no. And this is what we were saying before, this is another opportunity, and there's been quite a few over the years since the contract reform, another, marking post of why you need to consider, are you in control of your business, or is the NHS pulling the strings? And again, I'm not saying, I mean, in my practice, we've got an NHS contract, we've got a private practice and an NHS practice. It's a very good contract.
mm,
But if it wasn't, we're now in a position because we've built our plan list where we can make a confident financial decision to get rid of the NHS. While it works, it's great, but for many practices, it's getting the balance right, isn't it? Do you have many mixed practices, Donna?
a lot of mix, but predominantly, I suppose, because the area I cover, Lisa, when you think about kind of Leicester, Nottingham, Birmingham, the heavy NHS areas, really. But, there's a lot of practices that are making the NHS still work to some extent, albeit it's being massively propped up by what they're doing on a private side. But there's lots of people out there that say, I desperately want to keep a contract. I want to be able to service those that are most in need of that care. But there's a lot of practices, again, we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years, practices are mass again starting to give contracts back. Now, we haven't seen that since 2006 when the contract significantly changed last. So it's been a real turnaround in the last sort of 2 to 3 years, I would say, of practices saying, I just can't do this. I can't financially make it work.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think what I've noticed in practices, I see dentists, particularly dentists that have been doing it, maybe 20, 30 years. And it's just getting harder and harder. And, let us make this clear. We're not here to bash the National Health Service, but just potentially have a discussion about what the alternative may look like. But we've got some very, very loyal NHS dentists that feel very much like it's the right thing to continue with the NHS. And I suppose I've been quite blunt in some ways, which I'm sure you have. It's like, let's just say it as it is. And I see dentists working themselves into the ground. Their profits are getting smaller and smaller. They're having to cut back on team, materials cost, everything. And they're so stressed.
Yeah,
And I'm kind of looking at them going, the NHS will not give you a medal.
yeah.
At some point, what you're doing is wonderful, but
Mm,
you're gonna suffer for this if it's not managed well. So for practices that are wanting to shift the balance, and I know it's a bit scary, isn't it, for some people to go, oh yeah, but the area we're in, it's a bit daunting. Oh, they won't go private. And I've heard many practices, oh yeah, but round here, no,
yeah.
they won't do it. So Donna, you've mentioned like your area generally that you cover. What's kind of your experience with that?
Of course, you're right. There's a demographic consideration, of course there is, but I think what practices have got to look at, Lisa, is, and this again depends where in the country you are. Really, there are areas where there are pockets en masse taking on NHS, which just blows my mind at the minute. Because I'm thinking, crikey, you all wanted out, 18 months ago. But then there's areas where there is just simply no NHS provision available. So, what you've got to work out as a practice is, what competition have I got? Where else will my patients go? Now, you can look at that from a business head and say, well, if they can't go anywhere else, they'll have to stay, therefore, they're more likely to convert. But of course, there's an ethical, moral, dilemma that people have. Well, where are they going to go if we can't service them? So, a conversion can work in any area. I mean, we've got practices where we've got two practices on the same street, Lisa, and you've got one that's almost the Ritz of dentistry, and you've got other practices that are absolutely not that market. And, both are fully private practices, completely different demographic, completely different offering to patients, and they're two doors apart. So, a conversion can work for anyone, but it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. And I think that's what practices get scared of is the minute they start thinking about conversion, to them, that means giving the contract up completely and we're out and we're done. There's lots of practices that don't approach it in that way and maybe just convert one clinician at a time and see how it goes. What's the appetite like with your patients? So there's lots of baby steps you can take in a conversion without fully ripping the plaster off if you're not quite there yet.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I suppose some people see practices advertising, particularly if you're perhaps an NHS predominantly practicing your area and all these others around you have gone private, and you've got this base of NHS. And for me, I've always said, well, you're in a really privileged position, really, because there probably, one, maybe there isn't as many options as there used to be for people, but you've also got the conversations I encourage practices to have is, do you know what? We've hung on as long as we can. We are really proud and pleased that we've able to do that. However, as you are aware, where most people have jumped ship,
Yeah.
we have hung on as long as we possibly are able to viably.
Yeah.
So that's a
Patients
position, a good position.
Sorry, Lisa. Yeah, patients are far more understanding in the conversions I've certainly done in the last couple of years. Where you expect the patients to be coming in with a letter and shouting and screaming, actually, there's been an awful lot of, we're not surprised, we knew it was coming. We've seen all over the media what a mess dentistry is in, because the reality is, there's only so much funding. We don't get a look in really in dentistry, because if it's a choice of keeping an A&E department open or subsidised cost dentistry, what would we all choose? Well, I think most of us would say we need the healthcare side of it. So patients are far more alive to this coming.
I think so. I think any of them that are within, an NHS practice now, it's kind of they've probably been like, oh, we've got away with this, we've been able to get it for much longer than most people. Um, as many of us know, we have those conversations, we are still getting a massive number of NHS inquiries, and I think we'll continue to do so. Um, all the practices that I work with, for me, it's some practices are tackling it as in sales. Let's convert them. Let's sell them private. And the practices that I work with, for me, I just like to work with the front of house team to actually, not tell the patients, sorry, we're private, but actually educate them on why we are where we are and
Yeah.
what the alternative is for them, rather than, everyone knows there's an NHS dental crisis. So let's just get it out there. And, one of those early conversations, you know, for me, it's okay. So, as you probably know, there's an NHS crisis. Many patients have decided an alternative option is really appealing to them. So, what you're saying to them is you're addressing it, you're not hiding from it, you're being honest, and you're asking if they'd like to know about the alternative. You're also kind of throwing in there that fear of missing out element, which is real because
Yeah.
there will be only so many people you are able to take on, aren't there? So I know you guys at Practice Plan do a lot of work at making sure teams are supported to have these conversations. And that is that vital key, isn't it? So
Because the plan, Lisa, is a really small part of a patient journey, isn't it? And yes, we're a plan provider. That, of course, is our bread and butter. But your plan can be everything you want it to be. But if you can't answer the telephone in the correct way, or worse still, you're not even answering the telephone. I see a lot of calls being dropped, emails not being responded to, or they're just very matter of fact and very salesy. You're never going to grow a plan if you can't nail that conversation on the desk. So, what I hear a lot in practice is, oh, I'm really sorry the NHS books are full, but we can see you privately. Take your dentistry hat off a minute. It
yeah,
makes zero sense to a patient. You're either full or you're not. That's how
yeah,
a patient views it. So when you're saying, but we can see you privately, the patient just sees pound signs. You just want to charge me
yeah.
more for the same appointment that I could have had on the NHS. So a lot of the groundwork I do with my practices is around that quality conversation, quality lead, conversion that ultimately leads into a plan-based longer term.
I love that. And as speaking dentistry terms, this is about giving patient options ethically. When patients, dentists are worried about the going from NHS to offering a plan, I'm like, for me, it's more unethical to not offer the options and let them make that informed decision, as we do with their treatment, to be perfectly honest. So you're right, and this is I think it's that moment where penny drops for people. You probably see it. I know I see it. And I'm like, yes, it doesn't need to be complicated. Like you say, take that hat off. The minute we answer the phone, a lot of the time, they're already going, do they pay? Do they not pay? This is healthcare, actually. So I always say, let's not overcomplicate it. The first question is, can you tell me a bit more about what you're looking for? And I'll see how I can help. And then it's only three things that that person wants. They want an examination, they've got pain or a problem, or they want a specific treatment. You
Yeah,
only have to get your team trained immaculately on those three things.
yeah,
It doesn't need to be. And I say to so many receptionists that say to me, no, well, no, no, our patient, they don't like that round here. They just like straightforward. I'm like, what? They don't want to be listened to. They don't want you to actually try to understand what their needs are before
yeah,
you jump in there and decide if they pay or not. This really has to be addressed
yeah,
properly at that first phone call, doesn't it?
absolutely.
Um, Now, we're not biased, are we? There are different plans available from different
Absolutely.
companies, aren't there?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the general kind of types of plan, you'll find most plans available with most providers. And that's about what type of plans do you need in your practice. Our preference would always be a maintenance led, or you may have heard it called essentials, where the patients are just simply budgeting for the routine appointments that they have. And that's the checkups, it's the hygiene, build some x-rays in, your emergencies, etc. That's easy to sell, it's transparent, it's just saying, Donna, based on your oral health, this is the plan I prescribe for you. It helps them budget them for what they're going to need anyway. The other model you might come across is what's called care or capitation, where patients are banded, they then get all their treatment included for a fixed price bar the lab bill. That's a difficult system to make work. I have come across dentists who can make it work, but the monthly fees are extortionate to make it stack up. That said, some practices like it. And then, of course, you've got all this sort of ad hoc stuff around that. It's kids' plans, it's facial aesthetics plans, hygiene only plans. You know, if you've got anyone on the call or listening in that has got an NHS contract but only does hygiene privately, as most do, how are you letting your patients budget for that hygiene? Because they tend to be the appointments that get a high failure rate. So actually, if they were paying a little bit of money every month to cover their 2, their 4 hygiene a year, you'd actually find far more patients that take up hygiene visits privately. So we will bespoke whatever type of plan you want, Lisa. And I say, I would imagine most plan providers can offer a similar sort of suite of options, really.
Mm, yeah. So, as we mentioned, budgeting for maybe the 2 and 2, as we call it, the 2 exam, 2 hyd, or the 2 and 4. I know some practices have variations, as you've mentioned, and it is about making sure that these plans are bespoke, because I know I've had some dentists that have said to me, oh, yeah, but it can't just be 2 size fits all. And it's like, well, you can do what you want, really. And, you can present them to your patients. You don't want to present a menu to them and let them go, oh, which one shall I? But this is where you get support, you get strategy, and you get structure with somebody like Practice Plan, to be honest.
It's about more than a collection service, really, Lisa, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because look, there's lots of providers that will simply collect the money from the patient and pay you every month, and I'm sure we'll do a cracking job of that. But it's these kind of conversations for me that you can't just give somebody a new product to sell or a new service to sell and expect that you're going to understand what you say to patients, who says what's the patient journey for that look like. So what we do is work really, really closely with our practices to make sure that this is embedded in the team. I want to be able to walk in and ask your cleaner what your plan price is, and you'd be able to tell me. Because if you've got a practice where they go, oh, you'll have to ask so and so on the desk, it doesn't work. Everyone has to believe that the plan is the right thing for patients. Otherwise, you're not going to sell it. You're not going to want to offer it to patients. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, and I know there's been lots of statistics, being on a plan makes people attend more, therefore they're more healthy. I know many dentists in my practice and in other practices notice a massive, significant um, improvement in patients' oral health.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself then brings in they need very little treatment. And then they also, when they're not spending on that, they all then want to look at the things they want, not
Yeah.
just what they need. No one goes for a fill-in and goes, oh my God, look at this lovely fill-in at the back. It's gorgeous, but some of the more cosmetic treatments, and it's not for everyone. It actually gives your patients something that really makes a bit more difference to them, and they can get a bit excited about. But I think it's a transition not just for the practice, but for the patients, isn't it? You
Yeah.
know, practices worry that they're going to have a complete makeover. Now we're charging private. And
Mm-hmm.
I always go back to it. I've been in some practices that I'm like, wow, this really is not changed since the 80s. Um, and I've been in some that are just like amazing. And there's no guidance on it's really hard to know what is going to be a successful practice converting patients onto a plan. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It is definitely about the people, isn't it?
Yeah. It's definitely about the people. And the other thing that I would say, Lisa, is what does matter when you go private are things like keeping to time, not keeping your patients waiting because we're running late, because we've not booked the right length of appointment, not cancelling patients on a regular basis, because they're all things that, of course, happen in practice. And, hopefully it's not too often, but often the case is it's every day. And the
Mm.
thing is, people that are paying privately do expect a higher level of service. You don't have to go and start ripping walls out and making your practice look like an IKEA showroom, because then what your patients will say is, that's where my money's gone.
Yeah, you
What they
can't win.
good service, to be seen on time, to, and to feel the value of what you do. Values quite, everyone will have a different idea of what value is, won't they? So it's not about the price you charge, it's about the value you build into what you charge.
It is. And there are things, that can help,
Mm.
we can invest in a scanner, we can invest in a coffee machine and all those bits, but there is no real, if you've got the team right, and when I go in and do training and practices, as I'm sure you do, I get a bit frustrated sometimes, sometimes I'll have the front of house team and then sometimes I'll have the clinical team. And I'm like, can we
You're
all just,
right.
this is a relay.
Yeah.
It has to be teamwork. And it, like you say, everyone has to sing positively from the moment we may have that reception conversation to through to the clinician, through to the hygienist, and back to reception, whether it's a handover. And it's all about enforcing, that this plan is really in the best interest of the patient, which it
Yeah.
is. We know it is. Um, and again, like you say, we're apologizing, oh, sorry, we're private. Saying to patients, we're actually going to be introducing a plan. It's absolutely fantastic. We're really excited about it. It's much different than saying, oh, well, we're going to have a conversation about you going private and maybe paying monthly. All these, it's about the positivity, isn't it? And I'm sure some front of house teams want to swing for me sometimes
So
because I'm a bit annoying. Like I'm talking to them about implants, right? Implants. Um, oh, do you do implants? And they, oh yes, the prices start from 2,200. There's a bit more information on the website. Would you like me to email you some information there? And I'm like, don't care about any of that. Somebody rings up and says, I'm thinking about having implants. My reaction needs to be, oh, fantastic. How exciting. I can definitely help you with that.
exactly.
Let's
Yeah.
just, and if you haven't got people that are able to have that passion, it's going to be it will be harder, but they can learn.
Yeah.
And that's where you guys
Right attitude.
really, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the clinicians as well, some of them want you to give them scripts, and it's like, it's just a conversation. You're putting their best interests center.
Yeah.
And I think they just get themselves, oh, they're not going to like this. So immediately they're quite guarded, which comes across like they've done something wrong.
Mm-hmm. Or often as well, you find clinicians feed off the front desk feedback. All the patients will never do that. All the patients want NHS, or whatever it might be that they have a problem with themselves on the front desk. I challenge a lot of my practice to split the hygiene and checkup appointments up.
Yeah.
Because we're in this inherent sort of model in dentistry where we do same day checkup and hygiene. What an absolute nightmare when your dentist wants to go on holiday.
Yeah.
So, it's just thinking differently, and the amount of resistance you get sometimes from the front desk team, the patients will never do that. You don't know unless you try, but if
Yeah.
you don't get behind it and believe in it, the same with your plan, the patients will never buy into it because they'll feed off you, won't they? Well, it can't be, that good because you don't believe in it yourself. So,
Exactly, exactly. And sometimes we don't realize we're being negative about things. And we feel guilty and all of these things. And, turn it on its head. Like I say, this is a fantastic thing for the practice. We know we've looked into this. We know that this is on the majority of patients going to improve their oral health. We know it's going to be the best option for patients. And this is something that we are excited about as a practice. A lot of it, a lot of practices now are doing it because they absolutely have to. And their patients are generally more understanding, aren't they? They definitely are.
and
So,
patients ringing now, Lisa, and saying, "Do you do a plan?" I mean, I've been at practice about 11 years, and I would say I've only heard that kind of question on the phone in the last 18 months, 2 years,
mm,
because if we think back to, we said earlier about the budget implications, yes, for businesses, they're really feeling that, of course. But actually, we've been in a cost of living crisis, feels like for the last decade, but certainly the last 4 or 5 years, things have got tougher and tougher for people. And, people are aware that the health matters. They're aware that they need to attend regularly because, they've probably seen news stories. If you've not got a dentist, you're going to take your own teeth out and all that kind of, media hype that there's been. But alongside that, it's how on earth am I going to budget for that, particularly on a private basis? So your plan just gives you another way of saying, we've got you. We're looking after you. Here's a solution to your problem.
Yeah, this and this is the thing. It as we said before, this is just another option. So we can't really talk about plans at the moment without sort of giving a little nod to what's happening
Mm,
in Wales now, and we know that it's not, and it's not an indication entirely that it's going to happen in
mm.
England, but it's an option potentially.
Might be that Wales are the guinea pig. We'll see.
Well, yeah. I mean, I support a couple of practices in Wales, and they're so stressed. They're so, they've been kind of like you say the guinea pigs chucked under the bus a little bit, like, oh, let's see how they get on. So for those that aren't aware, the changes that are coming in the way that patients are gonna receive NHS dental care. We don't exactly, even they don't know exactly what that's going to be at this point, but the chances are bit of goodwill is going to be gone. Patients aren't going to have the choice so much. There's going to be the nice guidelines are going to be much stricter. Um, and I've said, as you guys have been helping a lot of your Welsh practices, haven't you? It
Mm.
doesn't matter whether it's coming into us or not. The fact is, things are changing, and whatever that change is going to be, let's be prepared for it. So I'm saying, look at the plans, have it as an option, not as a you must do this, but as that little safety net where you can start getting patients in your practice familiar with some information and what's available. Do you think that's a good way to get prepared?
Definitely. So, I mean, there's lots of practices that are adamantly not going to give their NHS up. And hey, we will never pressure you to do that. We will help you if it's what you want to do. But I've got no end of practices who just have a plan alongside that. And that might be a practice that tend to hit their NHS contract by Jan Feb and they're twiddling their thumbs and they want more private patients. It might be we can't find dentists to deliver the NHS, but we found a private clinician, therefore we're building a private book. It can be all raft of reasons why you might want to plan, but it can be something that absolutely can run alongside what you already do. The challenge I would always say to a practice is, whilst you are still taking on NHS, if you are in that boat, you will always struggle to grow a plan in terms of with new patients.
Yeah.
That's not to say there's not lots of patients in your practice that would actually really value a plan. They're probably already having the private hygiene, like we said. They actually might be patients that do always opt for a private treatment option. Well, then actually to be a private member, they're likely to get a discount off that treatment. So quite often it can outweigh giving up the 2 checkups on the NHS because that's actually all they're clinging on to. So
Yeah.
yeah, plan can work for all types of practice, really, if it's part of your vision moving forward.
Yeah, I've been having the conversations because, as practices, we are a bit worried at the moment of costs,
Mm.
how we save. Now, I've always said, it's very, very difficult to reduce some of the costs. I have come across a couple of practices that are actually genuinely looking at some redundancy, which makes me really sad actually, because it's so blinking hard to recruit good people that it's a shame, and we should be focusing on the growth. And I genuinely believe that plans are an integral part of that, as well as the conversations, the good treatment, the patient journey, all of these things put into place to make sure that that patient chooses you and stays with you and is happy with you. Um, and doing the growth rather than, right, we need to use less of this and less. I've even had dentists, oh, well, we need to turn lights off more. I said, come on.
In the dark, yeah.
I'm like, don't waste your energy. Yes,
Well,
you
don't
know,
waste energy, but yeah.
that was very good, Donna. It was very good. Um, so they're concentrating on the wrong thing. They're
Yeah,
trying to cut costs with staff,
yeah,
and all the other things in the Christmas party and all sorts of things at the moment. But the real important thing is the growth, and whether that's private pay as you go, whether it's plan. But it's just that conversation. So having the conversation with your teams to make sure how vital it is. All my practices, I am meticulous. How many inquiries are you getting in? How many are we converting? Yeah, it sometimes makes front of house a little bit twitchy. But if I was a banana salesman or saleswoman and I was selling no banana, I don't know why I thought bananas then. I think that's the state of my mind at the moment.
Lisa.
If I didn't sell bananas, I'd
If I
expect,
I
yeah,
think it's not being scared as a front desk team to actually embrace that bit of feedback, and somebody as an outsider listening in. I mean, I will quite often mystery shop practices, but better still, I'll ask you to send me your call recordings because, a mystery shop's great. It gives me a snapshot in time, but actually listening in on a few of your calls is really valuable. So if you're not call recording, I would absolutely say that is a must. You need to know what your front desk teams are saying, because otherwise you'll get told what they want you to know. We can't be everywhere. If it's predominantly managers on the call, you can't be listening to your front desk team and running the practice. It's a difficult challenge. So you're right. I think really being open to some feedback and being open to change what you do. You can't do what you've always done and not, you'll just get the same results. And there's so much competition now, Lisa, isn't there, that I've got pretty much have resigned myself to the fact I've got to come privately. Well, now I can be really choosy.
yeah.
Now I can say, well, actually the service there was better. People will pay more for good service, but that is the bit on the desk you've got to nail. You've got to be fantastic at that phone call.
100%. Yeah, and like we say, it's not about, your area or being fancy. It's about the experience that people are getting when they're coming into the practice. And there are the basics, like you say, it is important, do a bit of housekeeping, make sure your dentists are on time, make sure that we're being respectful and not keeping people waiting. Um, the extra bits the reminders, you know, are we doing anything special when they come in? But most of the time, it's just rapport and it goes back to communication. If you have got poor communicators, be it front of house, hygienists, literally clinicians, deal with it. Don't
Yeah, great.
let's just put a big girl pants on and go, do you know what? This is for the greater good and we've got to get this done. We've got new receptionist at the moment. I've let her sort of get used to things for a couple of weeks. And, now is the time for me and her to sit down and listen to the call recordings. And I'd said to her from the beginning, don't think this is me, you know, looking to pick you up on things that you're not doing. This is about me making you absolutely amazing. And she was
Yeah.
really excited. And I have to, I don't know if you've ever done this. I feel like sometimes I have to put my money where my mouth is. I go on to people about how
Yeah.
it should be
Go
done.
answer that
I got
phone.
I people go, well, I'm like, do you want me to come and sit with you for the day? So I go into practices and sit on reception
Mm.
for the day and actually pick the phone up and do it and show them how it can be done or what we want to at least aim for. Um, AI at the moment has started to help us. Don't know if you've seen much about it, but the sentiment side, our listening skills, um, our empathy, all the soft skills that we should have as good communicators. Um, we're starting to judge ourselves and critique ourselves on that. I love it. Some people
Yeah,
will hate it.
yeah. We've got to embrace it because it's here no matter whether we like it or don't, Lisa, isn't it? And I think there's some great stuff out there that AI can do to support practices. But the bit it can't replace for me is that it is that empathy, it's that human nature, and maybe we'll get there one day. I'm sure the robots might take over the world one day, but that's the bit at the minute that as humans we have in our armor that we can play on that and we can be great with that. So never fear technology, because I think it's something we have to embrace. But for me, it doesn't replace that great conversation with a human being on the desk that really understands the world of dentistry.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, there's a place for it. I've over the years, we became practice plan practice in 2003,
Mhm.
and seeing how we've evolved our conversations and what's important to patients. Well, we now know oral health is really, really important to patients. So our big focus, for me, the most successful practices I see are the ones that are very hygiene heavy, very
Yeah,
hygiene led. That is the foundation of practices, and that comes from the education of the patients and having something like a plan that commits them to that,
mm,
oral health regimes and things.
yeah,
But we also have to remember that what's important to some isn't important to others.
mm,
And I've adapted. I've always done, front of house training. It's all about the people. I agree and I stand by that still.
mm,
But I also know that it's about adapting to what they actually want, not what I think I want to give them. And having contactless appointments,
yeah,
having been able to pay online, you know, it's so important to people, isn't it? If I can make an appointment with the dog groomers, book an appointment, pay, and only have contact with someone when I drop my dog off,
yeah.
I, we've become a bit unsociable, but that's not bad.
But also, I think our generation, Lisa, it's more convenience, isn't it? So for me, it's when I maybe log off my laptop at 8, 9 o'clock at night and I think, oh, crikey, I must book in the doctors or I must do this. That's the time of night I want to do things. What we find with the younger generation is they categorically do not want to pick the phone up. They do not want to have a conversation with you. They want to WhatsApp, they want to Snapchat, whatever else they're doing. So, as a practice, you've got to evolve. You've got to have all these different ways of reaching out to patients in a manner that suits them,
Yeah.
but also in something that you embrace and can work with within your own business, because it's definitely not a one size fits all anymore of picking up the phone and booking an appointment those days.
Yeah. No, no, this is the thing. If someone rings you, you're quite offended sometimes. It's like, what?
Yeah, how
Who's
dare
this person?
you?
How dare they?
Yeah,
Oh, and it's somebody actually doing something nice for you, but it's like, whoa. No, so we have to adapt. So, this patient journey and the plan being part of that journey and clinicians, understanding that, we've got the marketing side, we've got the education side, be it leaflets, social media, things that are, bespoke to your practice to enhance why these patients may like to become a plan patient. And the benefits, we forget, don't we? It's like as dental people, we forget sometimes that it's not about selling a crown or selling some whitening. It's about how they're going to feel
yeah,
once they've had those things. And the plan is the same
yeah, absolutely.
situation, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
So as I mentioned before, we converted in 2003. Best best decision we ever made.
good.
Our regional person, as you know, Donna, was the lovely Josie.
Yeah,
Um,
not with us.
oh,
24 years in, I think she is now. Yeah,
no, she's got to be more. Maybe. Oh, no, 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 no. We opened in 98 and we did 5 years NHS
yeah,
and then went private in 2003.
yeah,
Now remember, because I was pregnant at the time and we did the conversion and I'd got a week to go. And Josie just used to wheel me into the front
yeah.
office
Yeah.
and send the patients into me, go, you can't have that baby until you've completed patients.
That would have been a good one for the stories, wouldn't it? With a baby mid-birth during a conversion.
What would we have called her? PP? I don't know. No, but yeah, she was 22 last month, so that's how long ago it was. But yeah, I think if anyone is thinking of having a plan, explore the different plans, work out what you want from that plan. If you've got a team that you feel are just going to be able to smash it, think about what type of plan you want. Do you just want a collection service? If you're worried about costs, the costs for me are insignificant to what you gain.
Well, and also, Lisa, you should never, ever, as a practice, be actually paying your admin fee to any provider, because your plan should be calculated in a way that the admin fee is built in. Now, for some practices, that's built in through x-rays. For others, it might be the emergency. But we will help you set your plans accordingly so that really the patient's paying the admin fee. So, I'll often say to practice, don't get hung up on the pounds and pence. Think about what you want, what support you're going to want, and what that looks like for you and your team. Worry about the pricing bit. Let us do that, because we can offset that in a way that you never pay an admin fee. So don't ever be scared of that.
And I know you're a little bit sad like me. I'm a bit obsessed with the diary, and I
Mm,
know what a 10-minute white space
yeah,
costs.
sure.
I People can sometimes get a bit twitchy until they understand their finances and what they need to generate. You know, um, for me, putting your plan up a little bit each year, that for us is beautiful. It works. Patients, I'd say we probably lose two or three, and it's probably not for the reason it's gone up by 50p,
Yeah,
because 50p.
not really
And
there.
no, it's if I drop 50p, can I be asked to pick it up? Kind of thing. And we found what that's meant is we've been able to give our team, including our hygienists, they're employed, pay rises each year, because we're all feeling it. I've got
Yeah,
two girls at uni now, and I'm really feeling it. So it means what it means for you as the owners, but it also what it means for you, your team, and the retention and recruitment side. And just I would just say it's not until you do it that you look back and you think, I'm so happy. I've not known anybody.
same. Yeah. I've never had anybody come to me after a conversion and say, I shouldn't have done that, Donna, or, you made me do that and I wish I hadn't. I mean, we've had some dentists that kind of backtrack a little bit and end up, picking a little bit more Nash back up. But it's so, so rare, and it isn't just about kind of the going private bit. That's almost like the first step. It's when you sit down with a clinician, 6, 12, 18 months later and say, what impact has this had on your life? It is life changing.
Yeah.
It has been the difference, like you say, people being able to keep the business open. It's kept marriages alive. We've had a lot of that. And sometimes it's just kept people in the profession.
It
There's,
is. And I've grown over my 28 years as a practice manager, sort of business development manager, and learning about the business and not leaving anything to chance, actually having a plan with the diary, understanding what your operating costs are. And these are all things that I know that's the added value you do get from practice plan. And, many conversations, sometimes plan owners I find a bit twitchy about putting them up again. Well, there are other strategies, I know we have lots of discussions about, well, okay, you've got a very stable list now. Do those patients need to come in twice a year for you to pat them on the head? Or do you want to do it once if they're if they're
yeah,
low risk, doing one exam a year and adding that time onto the hygiene will benefit them so much more.
yeah,
And actually that then releases more earning time in your book, so you don't have to, that there are different ways of working, aren't there,
yeah.
that can be beneficial to the practice.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure zones, we're so sad, aren't we, Donna? Because we love a zoned diary, don't we, of
Yeah.
planned patients when we see them, the emergency zones, all of these things I know are vital to a really productive and effective practice. And you've got people, the managers and people that you bring in to help people achieve those things. They're not on their own, basically, are they?
absolutely. You know, we're there to hold your hand, Lisa, throughout. And it's not just, like I say, about holding your hand throughout that conversion. That is often the first step with a practice, if that's, again, where they're at in their mind and wanting to do that. But it's about a long-term relationship. You know, for me, I want to become an extension of your team. I want to know everything that's going on in your building. I don't care if it's about plan or not. You know, the amount of clients that get call me and go, Donna, I'm thinking of doing this. Can I just run it by you? And it's nothing to do with plan at all. And that for me is the ideal relationship, because there's no good me sort of just say giving you a plan in a box and saying get on with it and here's some leaflets and good luck trying to sell that.
Yeah.
You need somebody that's going to come in regularly and keep driving it, because if you don't, it will just become another job reception don't want to do.
Yeah, 100%. It is. That is the critical part, I think, isn't it? You know, the training, making sure if you pick up on any negatives from people, literally get to the bottom of it. You know, I'm not saying we've got to beat it into them, but they have to be on board because, you know, as our friend Chris Barrow says, if they're not on the bus,
Yeah,
they're off the bus or they're going to throw you under the bus. And
yeah.
you can't afford to do it, not especially front of house, that critical position, you know, but making sure I come across clinicians, oh, I don't like talking about that. It's not right in the clinical. Of course it is. You're
Yeah.
talking about their future care, how you're going to care for them. Why wouldn't it be suitable?
And also,
Um,
if you make sure it's health led, Lisa, and not, it's not about saving money on your treatment. It's not about even the simple things like spreading the cost and the worldwide cover and that sort of stuff. It's about keeping you healthy. You know, the best way I can look after you is for you to become a member of the practice, because that means regular attendance. We can spot problems. We can stop that invasive treatment that, you know, lots of patients end up having. I mean, if we sort of look at how on average, how often on average a plan patient attends, your average plan patient will be every 3 6 months, depending on what plan they're on. Your pay as you go patients are more like every 7 to 9. And then when you start to factor in those patients who only actually come when they've got a problem, they average out more like every 14 15 months. You
yeah,
can't run a business on a diary that says, I don't know what income I'm going to have in my diary in a month's time, because pay as you go systems are so reliant on the patient booking, turning up, paying deposits, etc. A plan just takes all that stress away, doesn't it? You know,
it
the
does
patient will come.
entirely, entirely. And, you know, we've been doing a lot of work lately on, you know, who are our patients? What type of patient do we want? Well, we want patients that are on board with keeping their mouth as healthy as possible, that may want to treat themselves to something that makes them feel more confident and happy or functional or, you know, all of those things. But ultimately, you know, it's about making sure there is an element of not targeting patients, but looking at patients and going, what would be the right thing for them? Again, not just from a money point of view, but you know, in particular, I've got this big thing at the moment about urgent, urgent. The number of one-off paying appointments that we see per week is we probably see 10 to 15. I've not
Okay.
got a dentist. I'm in pain, I've got a problem, and it's okay. You know, in our practice, it's okay. We're going to book you in for a half-hour appointment. The cost is X, and what that includes is X, Y, and Z. We will do as much as we can in that time, blah, blah, blah. Right.
Yeah.
So what we do then, we do it. Hopefully we get them out of pain and they're very happy. Um, and we do a follow-up. And what the dentist will do during that pain appointment is obviously get them out of pain, but they will also use that time to try to educate the patient a little bit about prevention.
Yeah.
And hopefully we hit the spot because it's our job. They're not just paying for us to get them out of pain. We should be trying to let them know that actually this is the last stop. Maybe let's get you out of it so that you're not getting to that point where you're having to pay 120 quid for 30 minutes.
Mhm.
So educating them on that. Also then doing a follow-up a couple of weeks later, giving them maybe a slightly discounted new patient
Yeah.
consultation. These sort of things, it's your opportunity to be the dentist for that patient who has been in a bit of trouble,
Mhm.
has been desperate, has been in pain, and hasn't got a dentist.
Yeah.
Why practices are missing those opportunities.
Yeah.
And it's not being pushy, it's not being salesy,
Oh.
it's giving them something and offering them something.
It's
And
not, it's amazing, Lisa, isn't it? How many, when you speak to a front desk reception team, do not see themselves as being in sales. And I'm like, you're the biggest sales force in the practice. If I can't get past you, I'm not getting in the chair.
yeah,
Therefore, your dentist then can't do the job that they're there to do. So, like you say, it's all just about choice, but it's about education. Those patients who come every 14, 15 months with a mouthful of problems are in that vicious cycle of thinking you're expensive. I'm not going to go unless, you think about any other healthcare, we go to the doctors when we have a problem,
yeah,
and they get into that mindset, and they'll only get out of that if you educate them that, if we were seeing you every 3 or 6 months, and a plan's a great way to do that, the chances are that would have been a fill-in, not a root canal, or worst case an implant or whatever. So it is patient education that is key to what.
it is. Yeah, and like I say, the hygiene side of it, don't underestimate how
Mm,
important it is that your hygiene team is on board because they
yeah,
are the most important people in this, really, aren't they? We've introduced, we've had a big surge in plans. Our plan patients, we use our GBT machine
yeah, brilliant, they
as
love it.
part. That's a perk of the plan.
Yeah,
I mean, that in itself, I think we've only had one patient in all this time that's gone, oh, I don't like that.
yeah,
I want the hand scaling again. And that's fine.
yeah,
But to be able to go on a plan, otherwise they're paying an extra
yeah,
25 pounds, making sure you're doing your auditing is so important. Are the conversations being had? How are they being had?
yeah,
Looking at the timekeeping, making sure going on a plan is like having almost like a mock inspection, isn't it? Or an actual CQC inspection. Look at your systems, look at your journey, look at what you're doing well, look at what you're not doing so well and what you can improve, and get your plan together
yeah,
of what you where you are and where you could be, because everyone can achieve that, can't they? If they've got the right strategy and the right support. I am
yeah,
biased. Obviously, I am a practice plan practice. I am biased, but I know, there are others that suit people very well. Um, but this sounds really a bit cheesy now, but I will say that the relationship I've had with you guys, it does feel like an extension of the practice and extension, as friends. You don't talk to people, you're not unempathetic, you're not you're not bullyish. You're there guiding them to get them where they need to be at their own pace,
thank
which
you.
I think is really, really important because it is a bit scary for some people.
Yeah,
Um, and for me, when I've practices that I support, are looking at that and they've spoke to different people, the feedback I do get is that the ones that are on board and the ones that have actually give them the most confidence is the conversations that started with practice plan. So
exactly.
sorry, we're not doing this practice plan sales pitch, but I do have to give you recognition there. I really do. So anyway, the first step, if somebody hasn't got a plan, what's the first step?
First step is reach out. You can inquire online, fill a web form in, chat one of us, or, however you want to get in touch, whatever suits you, just reach out. We'll put you in touch with the relevant person that covers the area for your practice. So, what we do have, which is a massive selling point for practice plan, is the amount of field team we have. There's sort of 20 odd of us that cover the nation, head to toe, top to bottom. So there's always going to be somebody that's your area particularly. They'll know your demographic, your challenges. They'll have an initial meeting with you. We'll talk you through what you want to achieve and what's possible. And then we'll take you through kind of what's the next steps if you want to come with us.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks, Donna. Right. We'll just try and finish a few minutes early just so people can run off and get back to the post, so to speak. Really appreciate it, Donna. I know we've got another chat with Kirsty and Jane
Yeah,
the first quarter of next year as well. So it is something that's current. So it is something that, ADAM do want to keep making sure we're supporting the practices with and the practice managers. If anybody does have any questions or thinks of something they want to ask us, you can get in touch with us directly through practice plan, or you can come through ADAM or myself. And just even if you just want a bit of a, to offload about what your concerns are, it's
yeah.
absolutely fine. We're here to help. But thank you, Donna. You've
Thank you
been,
so much for
it's
having me.
been,
Thanks, Lisa.
I know we could go on for another hour, couldn't we?
You see, we always got lots to chat about, haven't we? But
Always lots
no,
to chat
thank
about.
you so much.
Oh, yeah, no, so thank you. Thanks, Bob and Sophie. Sophie's one of my lovely practice managers, actually. Sophie's up in Tamworth,
Oh, yes, okay.
not too far from you.
Close to me. I'm
Um,
Lisa, yeah, my neck of the woods.
yeah. So yeah, anybody that wants to get in touch, please do. Um, thank you to Sophie and Bob. You've been lovely. Other people have come and gone and disappeared, and I know this is going to be sent out to everyone that's registered for the webinar as well. So hopefully everyone's learned a little bit more about plans and has hopefully got a bit more confidence if you're about to think about that next step. So
Thank you all. Have a
thank
good
you, Donna. Thanks, guys. Take care.
day.